What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my transfer tips for Game Week 13. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's teams and discuss whether they are good moves or not. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And don't forget to check out Sleeper's Champions League Pick'em game, which is completely free with prizes on offer. There is a link in the description below to get signed up for that, and more to come on it later. So let's start with the most transferred in forward this week, and that is, of course, Cunha. Nearly 500,000 FPL managers have already brought him in ahead of Game Week 13. And with his recent scoring, it makes a lot of sense, right? He's been on a ridiculous run in the last 4 game weeks. 16 points against Fulham in Game Week 12, 12 points against Southampton the week before that, 6 against Palace and 9 against Brighton, which, if my maths is correct, is 9, 15, 31, 43 points in 4 game weeks. Absolutely ridiculous. And he's now the second highest scoring forward in the game with 75 points, only 9 behind Erling Haaland. And he's got great fixtures to come. There really are no massive downsides, I would say, to bringing him in. Like, I think compared to what our expectations were with him at the start of the season, 6.9 million feels a little expensive. But for what he's delivering and the fixtures he's got right in front of him, I can't see a reason to avoid him if you need to make a forward transfer. Like, Bournemouth at home in 13, Everton away in 14, West Ham away in 15, Ipswich at home in 16, Leicester away in 17. Even if you got to Game Week 18 and you didn't have a spare transfer to transfer him out before Man United at home, it's really not the end of the world to play him in a fixture like that. And then after the Man United game, you've got Spurs away and Forest at home. And also, this is, you know, Game Week 18 to 20, when you've got those Man United, Spurs and Forest fixtures, it's over Christmas. And you know if he's fit, he will always play. And it's like an 80 to 90 minute man. So you don't really have to start thinking about transferring him out until maybe Game Week 21 onwards. That's a pretty good player to look to bring in. If you haven't got João Pedro already, I think there is a case to be made to grab him instead, because the fixtures are just as good and he's a bit cheaper. And that value can't really be ignored. That money might be useful for a future transfer. So possibly in that situation where you've got to bring in one forward and it's between Cunha and João Pedro, I'd maybe lean towards João Pedro. But in terms of the minutes you're going to get over the next 6 game weeks, that's definitely Cunha. So I can't really sit here and provide any negatives to bringing him in outside of the fact that a 6.9 is more expensive than a lot of the cheap forwards people have, and that might block other transfers. But obviously you will have to look at that for your individual team. The stats are pretty good as well. 0.27 expected goals per 90, 0.21 expected assists. So not a massive goal threat despite what's happened recently. But overall, the numbers are good. And obviously, you provide the context that he almost always plays 90 minutes. And he's great for bonus as well. Like, you look at any time he's got a return, I think he's pretty much had bonus points each time. So 3 bonus in the last 2 games, you'd expect, right? He's had 5 attacking returns in those. But 1 bonus when he got the assist against Palace. 3 bonus when he got the goal against Brighton. 3 bonus for the goal against Brentford. 3 bonus for the goal against Aston Villa. In a 3-1 loss, by the way, he still picked up maximum bonus. The only time he hasn't had bonus with a return was against Chelsea, and Chelsea scored 6 goals in that game, so maybe it wasn't such a surprise. So the guy's just really good. I will say, right, and don't shout at me in the comments, okay? Wait till you've heard the whole thing. He is probably overperforming a little bit. Every time I see him score a goal recently, it feels like it's an absolute worldie. Like, his XG is 0.27, but his actual goals are 0.65 per 90. And it's similar with the assist rate. So he is overperforming a little bit. And we should expect, you know, over the long term for his rate of returns to come down. But at the same time, the underlying stats are still good and the fixtures are great. So I think he's going to get plenty of returns over this run. I don't think, despite him being, you know, the second highest scoring forward, is essential. I don't think you need to necessarily start taking hits to bring him in. I think he's good, but not necessarily that good. But if you are looking to buy him, I don't really have anything negative to say, so just go ahead with it. So before we talk about Pedro Porro, don't forget that the Champions League matches return tonight, and so does Sleeper's Champions League Pick'em game, which is completely free to play with prizes on offer. There is $1,000 worth of prizes in each pool, and you can download the app using the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen. All you have to do is predict whether it's going to be a home win, an away win, or a draw for each match every match day. So I'm going to submit my picks for Tuesday right now. So I'm going to go for away wins first of all for AC Milan and Atletico Madrid. And then home wins for Barcelona, Leverkusen, Bayern Munich, and Inter Milan. I think with Man City, despite them losing 5 games in a row, it's not going to be long until they get back to winning ways. So I'm going to go for a home win for them. And then Sporting versus Arsenal is tricky. Arsenal defence is great, as you know. Not easy to score against, but it is an away game. Sporting now without Amorim, who's obviously gone to Man United. I'm going to go for a draw in that game. The only draw I'm going to predict for Tuesday's matches. And then I'm going to go for another away win for Atalanta against Young Boys. Then you do exactly the same for Wednesday's picks. And at the bottom, there's a tiebreaker just in case people are on the same amount of correct predictions. And that is how many total goals scored across all games. So I'm going to go for 59 and just save that. That's all you have to do. Completely free. Prizes on offer. Link in the description below, or scan that QR code on screen and get your predictions submitted before tonight's matches. So what happens when you're a defender and you go and get a 14-pointer away to Man City? Well, of course, you get a lot of transfers in, and nearly 200,000 FPL managers have brought Pedro Porro ahead of Fulham at home in Game Week 13. And it's quite funny because last week we were talking about all the people that were selling him, and I think I said at the time it's a perfectly reasonable decision to make because his numbers in terms of attacking threat were down on previous seasons. So, of course, he goes and scores a goal. And also, they were likely to be without Van de Ven and possibly Romero as well, which is what happened. So, of course, they go and keep a clean sheet away to Man City. You can't really write that. Nobody would have predicted that. So, if you sold him, I wouldn't feel too bad about the decision. If you're thinking about bringing him in, I would just say this. He's the kind of player that you've got to be prepared to keep for a while. Like, he's not someone that I would bring in to target the next couple of fixtures and then remove again. Like, Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, Southampton away is the next 4. Can Spurs keep 1 or 2 clean sheets in those games? Possibly, but the way they play, they're always susceptible to conceding. And also, Vicario is now out as well. Now, at the time of recording, I don't know how long he's going to be out for, but he's had surgery on a fractured ankle. So chances are he's going to be missing for a little while. That's also going to impact their defence. Van de Ven, I don't think is back yet either. Romero's got a chance for Game Week 13. We'll have to wait and see what Ange Postecoglou says. Defensively, it doesn't look great. And look, the attacking numbers are down on previous seasons, but they're still pretty good, right? 0.08 XG per 90, 0.12 expected assists. Not bad. But I think you've got to be prepared to just hold him for this next 6 to 7 game weeks. I just don't see the point in spending a transfer, bringing him in for Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, and then maybe taking him back out. I guess Chelsea at home and Southampton away is not terrible, but I just think he's the kind of player that people are not prepared to hold through the blanks. I think people will get frustrated with him quickly. I don't think he's a terrible option to bring in or hold on to long term. And one of the reasons I like him is because he always plays 90 minutes. Every single game he's fit and available for, and that's kind of handy over December. And most of these games, to be honest with you, up until Game Week 21 maybe, I'd be happy to play him in because you do have that possibility of getting an attacking return. And who knows, at some point Spurs might keep a clean sheet as well. Like if I look at these games coming up, right, Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, I'm happy playing him in both of those. Am I expecting a clean sheet? Not necessarily, but whatever. I know he's going to play 90 minutes. He's got a bit of attacking threat. Chelsea at home, not great, but I'd play him in that. Southampton away is fine. Liverpool at home is definitely tough, and maybe you'd ideally not play him that week. But he's the kind of player that if you've got to play him, you just do, don't you? I don't think you need to go out of your way to take him out. Then it's Forest away, Wolves at home, Newcastle at home. Again, you're not really that worried if you have to play him in those matches. Like Arsenal away in 21 is tougher, then the fixtures afterwards are good. I just think he's a long-term pick. At 5.5, he's cheaper than your Van Dijks, your Gvardiols, etc. So you save a bit of money. You know you're getting 90 minutes every week, and he can go and get you an attacking return every now and again. You just also know that the way Spurs play, they will concede, and that will be frustrating. So nothing against bringing him in, but you've got to be the type of FPL manager to see it through, I think. So let's talk about another defender next, this time Jurrien Timber, who hasn't had a huge amount of transfers in so far this week, but I think at 5.5 million he's worth considering. That's the same price as Pedro Porro, and if you're not already doubled up on the Arsenal defence, I would strongly consider going for Timber instead, just because of the fixtures Arsenal have got coming up and how strong their defence is. Now, if you listen to the whole stream on Sunday, there's probably going to be a little bit of me repeating myself here, but I just want to quickly go through it. So fixture-wise, you've got West Ham away, Man United at home, Fulham away, Everton at home, Palace away, and Ipswich at home, next 6, which look pretty good. I will say that I think there's probably 4 out of 6 fixtures there where there's a good chance of a clean sheet, but 3 of them are 16, 17 and 18. So West Ham away I think looks pretty good this week. I know they've just they've just beaten Newcastle 2-0. I'm not sure that's necessarily a sign of things to come. I think Arsenal could do very well in that game. Man United at home probably a little bit more difficult. Fulham away is not easy, but then Everton at home, Palace away and Ipswich at home I think looks pretty good. So I think you've got a good shot at clean sheets in 3 to 4 of the next 6. And defensively, their stats have been great. I know they haven't kept a huge amount of clean sheets since game week 5, game week 6. We all know that by now. But if we look at the underlying numbers, which are a good way to predict future results, the expected goals conceded, they have kept the opposition down to under 1 in 7 of their 12 games so far. So Nottingham Forest at the weekend was 0.33 expected goals conceded. You can say that Chris Wood wasn't playing, Gibbs White wasn't in the team, etc. That is still really impressive. That is the signs of an elite defence. Newcastle 0.53. Liverpool was actually a bit higher than that. Let me just find David Raya here. Liverpool was 0.85. 0.65 against Southampton, 0.32 against Leicester. It's just ridiculous numbers, right? And in the other 5 games, 3 of them they were down to 10 men. And then you had 1.28 Villa away, 1.28 Chelsea away, which is still pretty good considering their away games against decent sides. So I will die on this hill. Arsenal defence is great. It's arguably the best in the league. I know Liverpool have done very well, but they've had a really good fixture run. Either way, Arsenal are top 2. So I think they're worth considering. The fixtures coming up are very good. If you're not doubled up on Arsenal defence, I think that is the way to go. Double defence and Saka is probably the best triple up. I won't get into the fact that I've got triple Arsenal defence for this video. I'll save it for the team selection. I would definitely, for most people, leave a route open to Bukayo Saka. It makes a lot of sense. In terms of Timber individually, if you want to play it absolutely safe with minutes, you just go and get Gabriel or Saliba instead. And if you haven't got any Arsenal defender, I would definitely buy Gabriel first. He's absolutely nailed on. He's got threat from set pieces as well. But Timber might be worth the punt at that cheaper price if you don't have 6+ million to spend. I watched that Forest game and I wouldn't say he was necessarily really attacking because I don't think the numbers necessarily back it up. Like, let me have a quick look here. So Timber, let me just find him again. He put up, 0.05 expected goals, 0.05 expected assists. But what won't be counted there is the goal that he scored that was ever so slightly offside. Most of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of the time, he was in and around the penalty box. On another day, he gets an attack and return. And if that's going to continue, I think 5.5 is going to end up being a bargain. I think at the moment, with Ben White and Tomiyasu out, he's pretty much nailed on as well. I think Calafiori will play left back, Timber will play right back. And I think if one of them drops out, I wouldn't be completely surprised if it's Calafiori and Timber plays left back and maybe someone like Partey plays right back instead. So I think Timber's minutes are pretty good. It's just whether he can stay fit. He's already missed a couple of games this season through injury. Will that continue to happen? Possibly. He was obviously out for a lot of last season as well. But if he can stay fit, he's definitely playing the majority, if not all of these games that Arsenal have got coming up. He's clearly first choice right now. And 5.5 million for an Arsenal defender, in context of what the other ones cost, could be an absolute bargain. So I'm not saying it's without risks, but I think for what he potentially offers, if you're not already on double Arsenal defence and you need a new defender this week, he's definitely someone I would look at. Let's stick to Arsenal and talk about Bukayo Saka next, who's had nearly 300,000 transfers in this week. No midfielder has had more. And a bit like Matheus Cunha at the start of the video, I don't really have anything negative to say about bringing him in. If you've got 10.2 million to spend on a new midfielder and you've got the spare transfer, I can't really see any downsides to going for Saka. The fixtures are just very good for Arsenal for a long time now. We know he's absolutely nailed when he's fit. If you want to bring him in, that's exactly what you should do. He's on 7.3 points per match so far this season. That's higher than someone like Erling Haaland. The only thing I would say is don't rush to make this transfer if you haven't already done it, because Arsenal play in the Champions League tonight. There's other midweek games as well to consider. He's already gone up from 10.1 to 10.2. He's unlikely to go to 10.3 over the next few days. You might as well just wait it out and get more information. But other than that, he's just a great transfer in. I did say like a game week or two ago that for my own team, I didn't feel a massive pressure to buy him because I wasn't looking to captain him over the next kind of 6 to 8 game weeks because the Salah and Palmer rotation is so nice. But if you're looking at this week thinking, I don't really want to captain Salah against Man City or Palmer against Villa because he's not in a good run of form, Saka against West Ham away is pretty reasonable, right? I do think most weeks after that, there is a better captain. And so if you're looking at your team thinking, I don't have an easy way to get Saka right now, I don't think he's essential all of a sudden, but he is a solid option. If you can get him in soon, you're just going to leave him in for a while, basically, until he possibly picks up an injury. Like, you look at the fixtures after the next 6. Well, the next 6, right? West Ham away, Man United at home, Fulham away, Everton at home, Palace away, Ipswich at home. Great fixtures. And then from 19 onwards, it gets a little bit trickier for the Arsenal defence. But from an attacking point of view, there is nothing to worry about whatsoever. Like Brentford away, Brighton away, Spurs at home, Villa at home, Wolves away, all decent fixtures. The next toughest one is probably Man City at home in 24, and who knows what their defence will be like at that point. But even then, after that, Leicester away, West Ham at home, Forest away. If you bring Saka in now, you're keeping him until he picks up an injury, I think. I just don't think I can't foresee anything right now that would make you take him out, apart from possibly needing to get funds for Haaland, which right now everyone will say that's never going to happen. Things change quickly in FPL. At some point, you might want him. He's just great. Obviously, he blocks triple Arsenal defence, but I don't think that's a massive problem. Is there anything else to say about him? The numbers are good. No, just wait and see what happens in the Champions League first before making any transfers. Otherwise, I know what I wanted to talk about. People that have got Son and Bruno Fernandes, should you be transferring to Saka this week? I would say there's no rush to make the move this week. If you've got something else you need to deal with, Fernandes has got Everton at home, Son's got Fulham at home. They are not terrible options to hold for one more week before you get Saka in. I think with Son, the minutes are probably going to start to go up. I know he went off quite early against Man City, but they were 3-0 up. I think that played a bit of a part. And with Fernandes, he didn't look great against Ipswich for the first game under Amorim. Who knows what that might look like this week when there's been a few more training sessions and stuff like that. I wouldn't panic on him, basically. So if you've got something else to do, wait until game week 14, 15 to bring Saka in. Just bear in mind that he might go up in price before you get to make that move. Although game week 14 is a midweek fixture, so you're going to get to make that transfer a little bit earlier than normal. So price rises might not be such a big problem. Otherwise, yeah, if you've got a luxury of bringing Saka in this week, why not? So Josko Gvardiol's had over 100,000 transfers out this week, and it feels a bit like the Pedro Porro situation from last week. Right in front of you, you've got a tough fixture, Liverpool away. Obviously, City have lost a few games now in a row, and Gvardiol cost 6.3 million. So there's lots of reasons to get rid of him. But after that Liverpool game, the fixture run eases quite a bit. So you got Forest at home in 14, followed by Palace away, Man United at home, Villa away, and Everton at home. Under normal circumstances, if you had Gvardiol, you'd probably be looking forward to playing him in all 5 of those fixtures after Liverpool away. So I think he's in a position, like in your squad, where if you've got him and you've got, say, 2 free transfers and you just want to downgrade him to like a 4.5 to fund a move for Saka or Isak, whoever it might be, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Selling Gvardiol seems okay to me, but at the same time, from 14 onwards, I think he's a pretty good option. Obviously, Man City are in a position right now we've not really seen them in under Pep Guardiola. They've lost 5 games in a row. Defensively, they just don't look solid. But I still feel like he'll figure it out. If they can get more of their defenders back to fitness, we will see a slightly different Man City team. It's not going to be the same as last year. We know Rodri's out for pretty much the whole season. But I don't think they're now terrible, right? If they play Forest at home with, a lot of their defenders back fit, Palace away in 15, Everton at home in 18. These are games they can still get clean sheets in. And let's not forget how attacking Gvardiol can be. Yes, he hasn't got any points over the last 2. It's actually just 1 point in 2 game weeks. Before that, a goal against Bournemouth in a loss. Clean sheet against Southampton, a goal against Wolves in game week 8, even though he conceded. So before the last 2 game weeks, you had a run of 7, 9, 10, 1, 9 points. There's no reason why he can't do that again from 14 onwards. And I'm not sitting here saying you have to keep Gvardiol. I'm just saying that things might look a little bit different in a couple of game weeks' time and people might be looking to bring him in. I just don't think there's necessarily, and I know I say this about a lot of players, but I don't think there's a big rush if you can deal with him in game week 13 against Liverpool. And if Man City can get some improvement in terms of clean sheets, the fixture run is very good for a while. After Everton, in 18, it's Leicester away, West Ham at home, Brentford away, Ipswich away. I probably won't do it, right? But I'm not completely ruling out buying Gvardiol in game week 14. I've got the money to do it depending on what else I do with my transfers. He's the kind of player that will just do really well over this run in attacking returns. If they can pick up some clean sheets along the way, happy days. It doesn't feel right to buy a Man City defender right now, I've got to be honest. And I understand why so many people have sold him. But things can change quickly. I think 40 and onwards, the run looks good. His minutes should be decent as well. Even if they get a bunch of their defenders back, I still think he'll be in that 11 more often than not. So I think he's a solid pick still from 40 and onwards, not necessarily this week. But if you want to sell him, go ahead. Let's talk about Brennan Johnson next. Just over 30,000 transfers out so far this week, which isn't massive, but people are a little bit worried about that benching against Man City. And I think that number of transfers out would have been higher had he not scored. I think if he'd been benched, come on and done nothing, more people would have already transferred him out. But either way, there is a little bit of worry there. I would say about Brennan Johnson, if you've got him in your squad, there's reason to be concerned, but not reason to panic just yet. And the reason I say there's no need to panic is because that's only the second time this season he's been benched. Like, he was benched in Game Week 3 against Newcastle away. He came on at half-time and obviously just benched against Man City away and came on for 27 minutes. Every other game this season he started, and between Game Week 7 and 11, he played 80 to 90 minutes every single game. And there's not really a massive amount of competition for his starting place unless Ange Postecoglou sets up similarly to how he did against City. And I'm not sure that's going to be what happens moving forward. I think most of the time Kulusevski will play central. But there is concern there because I can't guarantee that. Now, I think the fixtures over the next 4 for Spurs aren't that bad. They are one of the best attacking sides in the league as well. And Fulham at home is decent. So if I had Brennan Johnson and other fires to put out, I would just hold him for one more week and then reassess. If he's back in the 11, I would just assume that most of the time he's going to start and he's probably fine to hold on to. And also, at his price of 6.7 or below, there's not a huge amount of options. We are going to talk about Mitoma later on, and he could be someone you think about. But outside of that, with Semenyo suspended this week, there's not really many places to go unless you've got money to upgrade. So I said yesterday, if you want to do something like Haaland and Brennan Johnson to Salah and, I don't know, any other cheap forward you want, fair enough. But otherwise, if you're just making a single transfer, I would consider holding him one more week. I guess it really depends on what Ange wants to do with Maddison, who, by the way, is the top scoring Spurs midfielder this season, which is kind of crazy. What he wants to do with Maddison and whether he wants to play more like 2 more defensively minded midfielders. So against City, he played Sarr and Basuma with Maddison central and Kulusevski played on the right. But most of the time we've seen Kulusevski play central. So does Maddison drop back out again? Or does he play Kulusevski and Maddison, which he's done a few times, because the fixtures are a bit easier? It's hard to know for sure, but given how well Kulusevski did on the right, it wouldn't be a massive shock if he was back out there again. I just don't think it's necessarily going to be what happens. So, as always with a lot of transfers, it's not completely black and white. If you've got the luxury of moving him on and the rest of your squad looks great, no issue with that whatsoever, especially if you're making the Haaland to Salah switch or something like that. But if you have got other things to worry about, I suspect that Brennan Johnson will be back in the side for Fulham at home. I think there's every reason just to keep hold of him. The stats have been good. He's at 0.65 expected goals per 90 for the season. He is underperforming a little bit. It's only 0.5 actual goals, but 0.5 goals per 90 is a pretty good return rate, especially for that price. So I still quite like him, but I get why people are worried. If you've got the spare transfer, you could always go ahead and take him out. So as I just mentioned him there, let's talk about Mitoma next. 6.4 million, just over 50,000 transfers in this week. Great fixtures to come for Brighton, starting with Southampton at home in Game Week 13. After that, it's Fulham away, Leicester away, Palace at home, West Ham away, and Brentford at home in Game Week 18. No fixtures there to worry about. You'd play Mitoma in every single one of those. As is the theme on this video, especially with the players that are being transferred in, I don't really have too many negatives to say. Right, he started 11 of the 12 games so far. The one game he was benched in was against Newcastle away in Game Week 8. That was off the back of an international break, so potentially that played a bit of a part in the decision. Brighton do have a lot of forwards available now, and a lot of them are fit. So I don't think we can sit here and say that Mitoma is 100% nailed on to start every single game over December. But also, he's played kind of, I'm looking at it here, like 84 to 90 minutes in pretty much every single match he started. The underlying numbers are pretty good. We know he can perform well. We've seen it before. 3 goals, 7 assists last year. Before that, it was 7 goals, 9 assists in 2,300 minutes. The guy is just great. And also last year, by the way, 3 goals, 7 assists. That was in 1,500 minutes because obviously he had that injury for quite a while. I don't really see too many negatives outside of the fact he takes up a midfield spot. So if you're structured in a way that you don't have Haaland, you've probably got at least 3 premium midfielders like Salah, Palmer and Saka potentially. 1 spot for Mbeumo or maybe Fernandes, then a cheap player like Rodgers. So depending on how much money you've got in the bank, it's going to be quite difficult to do like Rodgers to Mitoma. So you might have to sell like Fernandes or Mbeumo like I would. In that situation, maybe I wouldn't do it. But if I was going for an upgrade from like Smith Rowe or Semenyo or downgrading Brennan Johnson, and that's the kind of money that I had to spend, I don't think there's many better options than bringing in Mitoma this week. Like if we look at the midfielders in and around that price, let me just go to 7.1 or below. Like Smith Rowe's got really bad fixtures. It's not a good time to bring him in. Brennan Johnson I just spoke about. I don't think anyone's bringing in McNeil now. For one thing, after Man United away and Wolves at home, the fixtures are pretty terrible for Everton. Iwobi, I have seen a few comments saying I've not given him enough airtime. He's on 3 goals, 2 assists. Like he's fine for 5.6 million, but I wouldn't be bringing him in. And also, like Smith Rowe, the fixtures are not good. Madueke is interesting at 6.4 because the fixture run for Chelsea is really good. You could maybe consider him over a Mitoma. My only worry with Chelsea players outside of Jackson and Palmer is just they've got a few options that can play on the wing. And I know that Madueke played 84 minutes against Leicester just gone. Before that, though, it was 67, 70, 66, 75. Like, he does have 4 goals, 1 assist, but 3 of those goals came in game week 2. Like, from game week 3 to 12, he's got 1 goal, 1 assist. Like, the underlying numbers are better than what he's delivered so far. I think with Madueke, I don't think he's a bad option, right? If you're only spending 6.5 or below. Like, I wouldn't say he's a terrible pick, but I just don't think he's better than Mitoma. Harvey Barnes, you can never guarantee he's going to start. Martinelli's not bad, but he didn't play against Forest. I'm not sure if I don't think he's got an injury. He's not flagged or anything. But again, he takes up an Arsenal spot. Just pointless, right? I think double defence and Saka looks really good. Rodgers, I've just briefly spoken about. Semenyo suspended. Kulusevski, great player. And he does have 2 goals, 3 assists. But the underlying numbers are never that great. I think he's a great player, not a great FPL pick. I wouldn't go for Rutter over Mitoma. The minutes aren't as good. And then I'm not going to go down the whole list. But after that, it's just players that haven't scored a huge amount of points that no one's looking at. Like Rashford, no, definitely not. So yeah, I think for that price, Mitoma's about as good as it gets as a transfer in this week. So speaking of Emile Smith-Rowe, it's just over 100,000 transfers out so far this week. And I feel like with him, more so than a lot of other players so far this season, every time he scores, I get asked whether people should bring him in. And every time he blanks, people start thinking about selling him. The fixture run is pretty terrible coming up for Fulham, right? Spurs away, Brighton at home, Arsenal at home, Liverpool away, next 4. Not great, although Spurs will be without their first choice goalkeeper now, and Van de Ven probably, and maybe Romero as well. So it's maybe not a terrible fixture, but on paper the next 4 doesn't look great. If you want to sell him, that's fine. But for most people, I suspect that Smith Rowe is an 8th attacker, and you can just rotate him in and out of your side. Like if you had to play him against Spurs and Brighton, it's not the end of the world. And then in game week 17, you've got Southampton at home. And then after that, okay, it's Chelsea away, which is not great. But then it's Bournemouth at home, Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Leicester away. These are pretty good fixtures for Fulham. He keeps starting. I know that he's come off in the 58th minute against Wolves. Not ideal to get an early sub anyway, but also before the 60th minute is definitely not ideal. But these things can happen, right? He's started 11 of the 12 games so far. We know he's not a 90-minute man every single week, but a lot of the times he's getting 80-plus minutes, or has done since game week 5. I still think for his price, he's a perfectly reasonable player to keep hold of. Because for most people, like I said, he's an 8th attacker. If you're going to have to play him a bunch of times over the next few weeks and you've got money to upgrade to someone like Mitoma, maybe a Brennan Johnson if you're feeling like taking the risk, or you're just doing the Haaland switch, which I've said a lot of times now, fair enough, right? I think he's a good transfer out. And I certainly wouldn't be buying him. But I just don't think you can go through this every time he blanks that you've got to get rid. The guy's done pretty well this season. For 5.8 million, you got 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 returns and 11 starts. I mean, that's not bad for that price. Like, what more can you really be hoping for? You're not going to get a lot of the time like a Palmer from last season. Like that was just a one-off. I think Smith Rowe's decent. And let's not forget, you know, just a game week before, game week 11, scores against Palace, gets an 11-pointer, then suddenly everyone wants to bring him in, and now all of a sudden it's to get rid of him. So for some people it probably makes sense. If it's an 8th attacker you're going to bench most of the time, I would just keep hold of him and save your transfer instead. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to check out Sleeper's Champions League Pick'em game, completely free with prizes on offer. Link in the description below to get playing that before tonight's Champions League games. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll catch you tomorrow for the game week preview.